Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Fish Fear Me Studios, or as my nephews call it, Uncle Jason Flicks. We're going to be going over ice fishing gear, tips, and tactics a bit today. I'm going to have my handy dandy notebook, and I'm going to be using a whiteboard with the subject at hand on it, so that if you want to use this video for reference, you can come back to the whiteboard pick and know that's the part of the video you want to see. So we're going to start out by talking about ice fishing in general as if you've never been before. Some people have never been ice fishing, believe it or not. There are two types of ice fishermen. There's a minimalist, and there's a guy like me who likes to take the kitchen sink with him because I like comfort and have a good time besides just fishing, believe it or not. So we're going to talk a little bit about ice fishing in general. Most people who have not ice fished think, oh no, I'm going to freeze to death. I need thousands of dollars worth of gear. I'm going to fall through the ice, or untrue ideas. Anyway, they need to know that ice fishing for the most part is usually a sunny day with your coat off, running around with kids on the ice and dog and screaming and playing and having a good time while you sit back and do some of the easiest fishing you'll ever do. And so they need to know you don't need a lot of stuff necessarily to catch fish through the ice and to have a good time. You don't even need an ice fishing pole. You can use a regular fishing pole. You just need a way to make a hole in the ice and something to sit on and something to use for bait, and you're ice fishing. So there's only a few things that are really mandatory. I made a note of that. In my opinion, mandatory things include sunglasses, because you just have to have them out on the ice or you'll go blind. It's just the way it is. Poles and tackle, you just need something to fish with. An auger or something to make a hole in the ice. Your license is pretty important, and I recommend a chair because it's difficult to stand all day. Okay, we're going to begin with augers, ice augers. There are several different types of ice augers. I'm just going to name them right offhand. You have the hand or the manual ice auger. You have the gasoline ice auger. You have the propane ice auger. And you have the electric ice auger. Each has its own price and advantage, disadvantage. I'm going to start with the simplest and work my way up. Hand auger, like this one I have here. This is a Nils hand auger. This is a 6-inch. Generally, ice augers come in 6, 8, and 10 inch. There are 12s and 18s for serious ice fishing situations, such as the gorge, where you're pulling in big Mackinaw. They do allow a little bit larger hole there, just for that reason. Most lakes, you cannot make a hole bigger than 10 inches. This is for safety reasons. That makes sense. And the bigger hole is very hard to drill without a motor. The Nils augers are quite expensive for a hand auger. This 6-inch, I could probably burn a hole in 18 inches of ice in maybe 10 seconds. It is really effective, but doing that wears you out, of course. The reason I own this auger is in case I have trouble with my gasoline auger. I am not out of luck for the day's fishing. So I keep this one just for emergencies. It's a very good, probably 125 bucks. You could pick one up if you really looked hard. And that's for the 6-inch. Prices go up as size go up. If you're going to be hiking into the backcountry or doing something like that, where your weight is an issue and you want to be a minimalist, this is probably the auger you're going to want. Lightweight, makes a quick hole, and does the job really well. Now, the next one I'm going to talk about is the gasoline auger, which is what I have. And it uses a mixed gas. Mine takes the ratio of 50-1. Now you can go to the gas station, you can pick up fuel, you can get the premixed fuel, and you can make it yourself. But the problem I find with that is the gas station, unless you're able to find ethanol free, has ethanol in the gasoline, and that's corn alcohol with a little bit of corn oil. It will build up in your machine, especially if you let it sit over the summer, and you'll end up with the earwax in your carburetor, and it will just plug everything up. It's nasty stuff. I don't recommend mixing your own. For a reasonable price for the amount that you're going to use, I buy pre-mixed fuel. This has got no junk in it, 93 octane. It's great stuff as far as it has a fuel stabilizer in it, as well as no alcohol, no ethanol, no garbage. What that means is your augers are going to work every time you want them to work. And if you let them sit until the next year with the fuel in them, they're going to start right up the next year. Which brings to mind another point. I had an issue with this auger the year after I had bought it. Now I purchased this auger at Sportsman's Warehouse on a Black Friday event years ago for $200 brand new. It's an 8-inch Eskimo 43cc auger. I really like it, especially for what I paid for it. It's done a good job. I did have one issue with it right out of the box. I found when I got up to the lake, there was gasoline everywhere, and that it's had an issue with the fuel line right where it goes into the fuel tank. It would leak. So I got some fuel resistant gasket maker and went around it, and I haven't had problems since. So if you have that issue, there's one fix for that. I also have an extension I bought for it. You can buy these in different lengths. Should you have really thick ice and you need to get down a little further, that's how you do it. Now, I really like this auger, but I did have a problem with it because I ran the fuel completely out of it at the end of an ice fishing season, and I thought that was a good idea. And I put fresh fuel in it the next year, went to start it, and it wouldn't run very well. Well, come to find out through some research and taking it apart, the carburetor in these has a diaphragm. The diaphragm is a felt-looking material that has a bit of a bend to it, and it flexes and pulses to make the carburetor run correctly. Well, when I'd taken the fuel out of it, it had allowed air in there, and it allowed it to dry out, and it was then crispy and wouldn't flex anymore, and that was my whole entire issue. So I replaced that. Everything was good. So I've learned it's better to get this good fuel with the stabilizer in it, leave the fuel in it over the summertime, and then you don't have a problem. Next year it starts right up. Now, when you're using ice augers, I should mention the blades themselves are very, very, very sharp. They're very big and sharp. They're dangerous. You do need to take safety precautions. You do need to be aware of them at all times. Don't leave them with the cap off and walk around and kick one accidentally and cut your foot. Don't fall on one. Don't put one near a tent. Be careful with those blades. They're very dangerous. I had an issue with the rubber retention cords that came with these, so I actually took a bungee cord, and it hasn't had any issues coming off or coming apart over time, and it keeps that cap on to protect the blades and protect you. So I recommend doing that. The other augers I'm going to talk about are the last two are a propane auger, which uses the little green bottles. And those are really neat because you just screw the propane bottle on, fires them right up, and they go great. But they are very expensive. And then the last but not least, the other expensive auger is the electric auger. They run off a big battery. They are super light, super quiet, super expensive, and they're very fast and efficient. And they do a great job. But the only downside is using a battery, they only have so many charges, although I've been told no one's ever had trouble with them running out. I have batteries I use all the time where I've had issues with drills and things, so I question that. But I do know all you have to do is forget to charge it one time, get up on the mountain and realize, oh no, I'm out of luck. So make sure your battery's charged if you have one of those. Maybe you have an extra battery. Cold batteries don't work as well as warm batteries, so you might want to keep it warm if you have to. But for the most part, I've heard only good things about them, other than their price. Also, anytime you're making a hole in the ice, some people use a hatchet. If the ice is very thin and you're very brave, go for it. If you have access to a digging bar, people will chip out a hole if they have to with that. I remember when my grandpa would go out on Flaming Gorge, and these were the days when he would drive the old Ford out on the gorge, take a bar, chip a hole, roll his window down, turn the heater on, and fish out the window. Those days are long gone, but you can still make a hole. Just remember, there are size limitations, legal size limitations to holes you can make, or you'll get a ticket. Okay, just a couple more items here to go over. Just make sure you take some sunscreen and something to protect your lips, because you won't notice it, but reflecting off the ice will just burn your lips off. Your face will get sunburned. You won't know it. Don't let that happen to you. Also, don't forget to take your fishing license. And most importantly, if you're going to take a snowmobile or a machine, make sure it's registered. Because I've been checked many times where they never even ask to see my license, but they want to see your registration. Because that's where their money is made, and ticketing you for that. So be sure to check that. Okay, our next subject is seating or chairs. A lot of people are just going to go out and they're just going to take one of these folding chairs that you just whip right out. They're not too hard to carry out. You can sit fairly comfortable in them, and that's a good thing. That's a good idea. Some people will sit on a bucket lid that has a soft chair built onto it. Some will use a little triangle chair. Whatever you want to sit on is fine. But this right here has literally changed my fishing life. This anti-gravity chair, they run about 60 bucks last I checked. It will give you a place to sit your feet, which, believe it or not, just takes a lot of fatigue out of your legs over the day. And with your feet on that bar, they're not sitting on the ice. And the ice is cold, and it will come through your boots by the end of the day if you're not careful. Now, this chair will also allow you to sit back and relax and take a nap almost flat. And this is one of my favorite things, because you get up at 3 o'clock, you get your gear together, you drive clear up on the mountain to be there at daylight, you haul everything out on the ice to go ice fishing, set up all the gear, you catch a bunch of fish right away because that's the best time, and then you are dead tired. So you lay this back and you have a nap, and sometimes that's my favorite part of the day. So if I could recommend anything, it would be, if you're going to spend any time on the ice or in a tent or in one place, to get one of these. Okay, we're at our next subject, which is ice fishing sleds. There are a myriad of ice fishing sleds available. There are sleds similar to this large Otter Magnum I have here that are small, that most people like. They're fairly cheap. Put a little rope on them, you pull them behind you with a bucket and a few things of gear, and that's what a minimalist will generally use to get his stuff out on the ice. Now, you can make your own sled. I have this one up here that I made from an old chaise lounge and some plywood and actually a couple of thrift store skis. And I can put 400 pounds on that sled on bare ice and pull it with my pinky. Now, on snow about 1.5 feet deep, I can still pull it, but it gets a little more difficult. And that's when I will use a harness. You can buy these harnesses for pulling your sled, believe it or not, from Cabela's or Shields or whatever. They're not too bad, and if I could ever recommend anything if you're going to pull a sled with any weight on it yourself, is to get one of those. It will save your back. Makes it so much easier. And I would also recommend hitting the thrift store if you don't have them and getting you a pair of ski poles, because when you're pulling on the ice and you're leaning forward with your boots, these will help pull you along as much as your feet. And I don't recommend the collapsible ones. They're just not strong enough. Get a one-piece if you're going to do that. Now, this sled right here is the biggest that Otter makes, the big Magnum. And I got this one. Obviously, you're not pulling this behind yourself. You're going to use this with a machine. And I got this one to haul everything I like to haul and to be super comfortable when those days come. So I had issues with it right away because the sides are so soft. They would peel up when you put a strap on them, and they would come off. And when you're doing 30, 40 on the snowmobile with all your gear behind you and the strap comes off, bad things happen. So what I ended up doing is I ended up putting unistrut underneath the lips. And I bolted the unistrut through, and I also put eye bolts in the tops of it, so I can strap anything I want to those eye bolts and tighten that right up tight and not have to worry about anything falling out while I'm traveling. And it's worked very well. Now, these sleds, because you're going to be pulling this behind a machine, the bottom of the sleds is going to hit dirt sometimes, they're going to hit rocks, they're going to hit ice. It's going to be vicious to the bottom of these sleds. And for something that costs as much as these do, you don't want them to wear out prematurely. So what's the answer? Well, Otter conveniently sells you a $200 kit that you can put these runners on the bottom of it. Or you can do what I did, and you can go down to the thrift store and you can pick up some skis and take some wood inside and attach them just so the bottom stays off the ground for the most part, and greatly extend the life of your very expensive sled for pennies. Now, to pull it behind your snowmobile, your four-wheeler, UTV, what have you, you're going to need some sort of a system. Now, of course, they sell a hitch that's very cheap, flimsy. It's a one-piece little deal that I don't like for quite a bit of money. So I fashioned my own, again, out of use some unistrut and a piece of plywood. Now, the way I did this is so that you could easily take the pins that you can get from Otter for putting the hitch on, and you can order them and you can have them poke through and attach it quickly and easily. When you're when you're up there on the mountain in the morning and it's freezing cold, your hands are cold, you're not able to use tools normally. You're not able to use wrenches and bolts and nuts. These pins make it so easy. Just jerk them and put them in, and you can do that with frozen hands. Now the reason I put wood on this is because when you're pulling this behind, say, a snowmobile especially, you're flipping snow up constantly, and this puts that snow back down under the sled and gives you something to pull on rather than burying your sled. So that worked quite well. Now I do also have a sled cover that drapes over the top of the sled. Now the straps are going to keep your items in the sled, but you could lose a fishing pole, you could lose a hat, you could lose something you shove in there not thinking about it, just blow out as you're going by. So this keeps everything inside as well as keeping the snow out of it. That's going to be flipping up everywhere, and that's kind of a useful deal. You don't have to have it, but I sure like it. There is one more sled I thought I should mention. When you're fashioning your own sleds, like I've done here, there are many types you can do. PVC, you can do all sorts of types. There's one called a Smitty sled that I'd recommend if you're going to build your own. Get online, look up Smitty sled and how to build one. And they compact, they come apart, they fold down to nothing. And that way, if you have a car, you don't have a truck, and you would still like to take it to your sled, you can fit it. So look into that if you're interested. Okay, our next subject is going to be lures and bait for ice fishing. Right here I have some examples of what I like to use. If you're going to be taking maggots, or what do you call them, wax worms or worms or anything like that, I recommend getting a bait puck. These are really cool. They're breathable, they're easy to open when your hands are cold. They are insulated, so it keeps the worms from freezing. And you can still go home and put these in your fridge, which is what you should do, because that puts them into hibernation and keeps them fresh for the next round, and you can use them all year long that way without them going to waste. So these are really cool. My go-to bait is honestly shrimp. It is my favorite standalone bait. As you can see here, I have colored shrimp, and we have orange, chartreuse, and red. I would recommend going with pink rather than red if you're going to do that color, but I sure like the chartreuse. I use Potski fire brine colors and soak them in that. I have some orange and red. I would like to try some yellow as well, but these have really worked real well to bring the fish in. And you can use them as standalone, or you can tip them on your favorite lure. Now there are many things you can use: spoons, jigging spoons, little tiny things you can put bait on, or what have you. The sky's the limit when you're ice fishing. If something's not working, try something else. It's part of the fun of ice fishing. Just keep trying something until it works. Now, here we have contraband. This is power bait double glitter. If you can ever get your hand on this, get it for ice fishing. The reason being, when they made double glitter, they found out that there's so much weight to the glitter that this bait will sink. It doesn't float like normal power bait. So they thought it was defective and quit making it. Of course, when you're ice fishing, a sinking bait is ideal. To have to put a weight down to the bottom and have your bait float up so the fish has to take it and go with it for a while before your jaw jacker trips, or before you know he's there, is not ideal. You would like to know the second he takes that bait that's hanging and goes with it. So this stuff is the only stuff that does that as a dough bait that I've ever found. So if you can find some of that, get your hands on it. It's good stuff for ice fishing. Now, you can jig with spoons. You can use anything. There's a myriad of ice fishing lures to use. Honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong to use as long as it's working. And you can try whatever you'd like to try, and just keep switching it up till something works. All right, our next subject is going to be fish finders and flashers and the like. Now, I don't think you necessarily need one, although they can be used very, very well in certain situations. A fish finder, for example, will tell you the size of the fish, how far down it is, pretty well. Whereas a flasher pretty much just tells you that the fish is there and at what depth. And this is ideal for targeting fish at a certain depth. Let's say you're in 60 feet of water. Well, your flasher immediately tells you, oh, there's a fish maybe in 30 feet of water. So you pull your lure off the bottom to 30 and you get right where he's at and you can catch him. And that really increases the effectiveness of your ice fishing. Now, as I have learned, most fish, especially most feeding fish and most large feeding fish, I should say, trout, are next to the shore. They're not in very much depth. And so I find very little use for a fish finder when I'm ice fishing. Probably mostly because I learned the bodies of water that I fish, and I know where they're going to be and at what depth, and so I really don't need one. So unless you're exploring new water or you're in deep water where you need to be targeting fish that come sporadically at different depths, you really don't need one that much. They're nice to have. They're extra weight. Some people would swear by theirs, they have to have theirs, but it's up to you. It's how you want to ice fish. Now, I have one that tells me the depth and everything, and I have a little one that's more portable if I want to run around the lake and do little holes and just drop it in real quick and do a check and see what's there. That's kind of how I go about it. The thing to remember about a fish finder, or even a flasher, is that they send down a cone of radar, sonar, whatever, and they look at what's in that cone. So the cone gets wider as it goes down. If you're in 60 feet of water, maybe you have a 20-foot view of the bottom, whereas you only have a 1-foot view at the top of the ice. So you're not seeing those fish, you're only seeing what's in the cone. Now, if you're in 2-3 feet of water, you may be only seeing that much of the water on your cone, on your finder, and it's not going to do you any good. Even 10-15 feet of water, it may not be doing you that much good. So you have to judge, where are you fishing, how deep do you want to fish. Are you at Strawberry by the dam where it's 60 feet and the fish come through at all depths and you're going to be reeling up and down all day? Do you really need one? So you have to judge that. One thing I do know about people that use flashers and such all the time is that they just sit there with their pole in the water waiting for a mark before they try to find the fish and do something to catch it. And I think that's a big error, because all the fish that you're not seeing or going by may not be coming to your lure because you're not moving it. I give my lure action no matter what depth I'm in or what time of the day it is, or just non-stop. I'm keeping it moving. If something over there is going to see it and come over here, then I'm going to catch that fish. If I'm just letting it sit there and he doesn't see it, there's nothing moving, he goes by, I just missed a fish and I don't know it. Yeah, ice fishing, you have to wait for the fish to come to you, but that doesn't mean they can't see what your offering is from afar if you're making it flashy and giving it some action. So don't miss any fish by just getting lazy. Don't let a flasher make you lazy. All right, our next subject is poles and jaw jackers. I'm going to start with the fishing poles because that's going to lead us to our jaw jackers. As you can see here, I have quite an assortment of poles, different lengths, sizes, weights, etc. And I have a very heavy-duty case for them. And when you spend money on something, obviously you want it to be protected, not be broken, and to last. And these cases are worth every penny you'll pay for them. I got one Fraybill one and I got one from Harbor Freight, and I'm happy with both. They keep the water out, and then you can lose one of these off the back of the snowmobile, or you can throw it on the ground and you know your poles are in perfect condition. I can't recommend anything more than that. Now, as you can see with these poles, they already have a lot of rigging on them. The great thing about ice fishing is you can use a lot of poles. You can have them all ready to go. You can still only use 2 at a time in the water, but once you pull a fish out, if you have a problem with that pole and the fish are coming through and they're going to be gone because they come through in schools and you've got to get back down there, you whip another pole out and you get it down there. Or maybe a bait's not working, you just set that one aside, pull with a different bait or lure on it and try that one, and you just keep mixing it up. Now, when you get out to the lake and you're first there, you obviously, the first thing you want to do is you want to get a hole drilled and you want to get a pole in the water. You might as well be fishing while you're setting up the tent and messing with everything else. So what do you do when it's so cold that your fishing hole is freezing over? After you've set the pole out there, you're not going to know there's a fish there if it's frozen solid. So I've looked at many different options. iFish Pro I've tried ice hole covers, I've tried different things, and I found that the best thing that works the best is this ice stopper bobber. The ice stopper bobber, I'm going to pull one out here and we'll take a look at it. Slips on over your line, and the way it works is it opens up inside and you fill it with a non-toxic antifreeze that they give you. I'll show you in a minute. Anyway, you fill it up put it back together, and what happens here is that the line will actually move through and be coated with that antifreeze, and it will keep your line from icing. Plus the hole itself will freeze around this, freeze this bobber solidly in place while the line moves through it, and you will not miss a fish. That's the best solution I've found for the morning bite. This is the fishing line de-icer antifreeze that they sell. It's environmentally friendly, and this is what you'll use. You get these ice stop bobbers from the internet. I can't remember where I got it exactly, but I couldn't recommend them more. Now I have my jaw jackers here in a case as well, because anything that costs 40 bucks a pop is worth taking care of, especially if it's made of plastic. So I recommend you get a case and take care of your jaw jackers. There are other forms of self-setting hook setters, the Automatic Fisherman, and a few others. You can actually make your own with some designs on the internet with some boards and simple pins and stuff, if you don't have the money, and they're a great thing to use. I have found that I like the jaw jacker better than the rest because of its sensitivity and simplicity and compact nature. I really like it. Now I do have alarms on these, as you can see. I did a video on how to put the alarms on them earlier, so I'm not going to cover that here. I am going to set one up just to show how it should be done properly, and how you should hook one up to the pole. Now obviously you fold the arms out, and then you take these little cleats at the end, these picks, and you click them. Then you don't just put them out, you have to click them in place. These will keep this jaw jacker from moving once the fish takes your pole, and it will not let it move. It will not let it go down the hole. You do not have to worry about losing your rod. These things are flawless in that nature. I was shocked at how much so. Now, we're going to pull the pins and show you how it feeds out. Okay. We have this feature here. This is a angle that you'll set. If you have a very short pole, you may want to set it on the angle where it will hook the least, where it will give the least tension. I've always put it on the highest setting and preferred that. You'll also set these pinholes to wherever you want. Now the way to do this is so that when your pole comes out of where it's mounted here and makes the arc over here to where it catches on the latch, okay, you want to make sure that the pole tip comes straight down to the latch at the end, that it's not angled this way or angled back that way. It needs to be straight down. And you achieve that by adjusting this until it fits your pole. That's how that's done. Now, like I said, I do have alarms on the other jaw jackers, but this is actually a blue tips tip up alarm. The way this works is you'll turn it on, and when it trips, it will send a signal to your Blue Tips app on your phone from hundreds of yards away to tell you that it's tripped. The alarms are nice when you're close by, but you need the Blue Tips for long distance. If you were to say, oh, I want to check over there on that side of the lake, but I want to stay where I'm at. I don't know if there's fish over there, because it's going to alert you. This is what I like this for. Now, to use a jaw jacker, I'm sure you can look up videos on this, so I'm not going to go in depth on this. So just put it in, and there's a loop at the top. This loop is very important, and it's important that you tie it correctly. If the metal is hanging off this loop, you've done it wrong. The metal needs to be against the eyelet. Make sure you get that correct, or you're going to end up with your line catching on it. You're going to end up with a lot of problems. It may even whip and hurt you. Make sure that gets tied right. That will go over this little hook right here, and you will push it down. Okay, so we're going to do that. Okay, once you've got this in place like this, you're going to, this is the trigger mechanism right here. You're going to lift that trigger mechanism up, and you're going to hold it in position like that. Okay, don't take your finger off it. Now, the way I recommend doing these is when you're bent over this thing like this, put your hand over the rod. Keep your hand over the rod. When you let go of the trigger, make sure your hand's there, not your face, okay? Back away, and that's a safe way to do it if you're not doing it from the side, which is a little harder, okay? So keep that in mind, don't get whipped. The only thing I can think that you're gonna really have to watch with your jaw jacker is that you do not want to get the mechanism wet. And when I say wet, I mean 1 drop of water on it if it's freezing cold, because it will freeze it in place. It will not trip. And I've had that happen more than once, and you'll miss your fish. And you'll never know it because it'll be frozen in place. If that happens, take some de-icer spray with you and de-ice it. But you've got to be careful about that or it'll ruin your whole day. Okay, our next subject is tents and shelters. I actually have a Bigfoot 6000 pop-out tent that I really like. It's bigger than most people would want, but I found that it comfortably seats 3 people with 2 poles apiece, and nobody gets tangled and everybody has room to move. So I don't like to cram, and I don't like tangling with my neighbor. Now, you could even take a regular tent out on the ice and be fine. I recommend taking one if you can, if you're going to be out an extended period of time, and especially if you know you're in the right spot to fish, because you can't move. But they keep you warm. If the sun's too bright, you can take a nap. If the wind comes up and blows, you're all right. The only thing I really recommend with them is make sure you tie them down. Don't just set them up because there's no wind and think you're fine. A wind will come out of nowhere, and yeah, it'll blow it over. It'll hit your heater and burn a hole in it. A year or 2 ago, there were people up on Fish Lake that will tell you about a wind that took people's tents away, and they were looking for them for weeks after. And don't risk it. Tie it down every time. This sled, I actually had a couple doors on it at one time, back before these tents were invented, and I would just set the sled straight up, and I would open the doors on it, and I would get inside and use it for a windbreak. So you can get creative and do whatever you want, but getting out of the wind sometimes makes your day. Now, when you're installing these tents or putting them in the ice, they have cleats that come with them. You do need a device that you can buy. It will go into a drill similar to this, and you put the peg, the ice pegs that they sell in a drill, and you just burn them into the ice, and you can hook your tent up really quick. When I say burn them into the ice, I mean make sure you have a drill. Take a drill with fully charged warm batteries with you, because doing it by hand is a pain and it takes a lot of time. Okay, really quick, I want to do a little thing about ice safety, because I think it's very important. A lot of people are afraid they're going to fall through the ice. Unless you're going in 2 inches of ice and you're a fool, you're probably never ever going to have trouble with that, but it's better safe than sorry. Now, as far as ice safety goes, I carry with me a set of ice picks. What these are is they're just well, this kind you have to push to engage. Have a sharp tip on them. You wear these around your neck. They go in your hands, and they get you off the ice should you fall through, because you just can't grab ice when you're wet and cold like that. So they could be a lifesaver. They're very important. Also in ice safety, another thing that I find indispensable is to take an ice bar with you. They have them all lengths. Like you can have one that goes clear to the ground. You walk along and test the ice with should you feel the need. I take this one for several reasons. Because if you had a snowmobile and it was a little slushy and you're stuck and frozen at the end of the day, this will chip you out. If your tent pegs melted in the daytime and the evening, when you go to leave, they froze into the ice, you may need these to chip them out. You want to check the ice? You can use this to check the ice. This is a great safety tool. It will really help you. I recommend taking this. Okay, our next subject, heaters. There are a lot of ways to stay warm when you're ice fishing. People will use hot hands, toe warmers, hand warmers. These are great little quick things to warm you up, especially if you need to warm up in a hurry. What you may not know is because they're oxygen activated, people will open them up and then just stick them in their pocket, and they just don't seem to get warm or get warm fast. You have to mix them up and blow into them, get the oxygen in to them, and they'll heat up quickly and they'll work much better. Now, if you're ice fishing, you're going to want a heater of some type probably. I have a little buddy, and I have the mystery heater, and I have this this regular one as well. Now, I take both. This Mr. Heater Big Buddy will actually put out more BTUs than this one here. It won't last as long unless you're constantly changing the propane tanks, but it will heat up my big tent more so than this one will. But I take both because I've had problem with this before. The issue being, if you're outside of the tent and the wind comes up, these will blow the pilot out and be out in a hurry. They'll just go right out. You cannot get them to go outside in the wind. I've had them where there was some snow that got into the pilot light, and I couldn't get it to go because without the thermocoupling being hot, it will automatically turn itself off. Which brings me to this. I take one of these. They're cheap and they save your life. If you have to start one up with this to get the snow melted out of it, or if you have to light it and you just haven't got anything else to light it with, or matches got wet, or your lighter's not working or something, these are awesome. Not to mention, let's say your pins to your sled froze and you need to get them off. This will get them off. Your lock on your snowmobile trailer is frozen solid and the key won't turn in it. Warm up your lock with this, you can get it open. This is a safety thing as much as anything else. I always recommend taking a torch. You can also use a hot dog stick to cook over these, by the way, which is a great thing. And last but not least, you can take that torch, you can stick a couple charcoal briquettes in one of these coffee cans. You make a hole or depression next to your ice fishing hole, and then you warm those briquettes up. You'll give enough heat to the water adjacent to your hole that it'll keep your ice hole from freezing over. So that's a cool little trick. Another safety item that I really like is this shovel, and it has saved me, and others have borrowed it while I was fishing. It's very lightweight. Clicks together easily, and it extends. So you can take that, and if you got some wind coming under your tent, you can shovel some snow around it. If you get your snowmobile stuck, this can dig you out, or even your truck perhaps. For how cheap it is, I really recommend you have one of those. Okay, here's our next subject, scoops. Now I have three types of. There's also one called a slush inhaler. It's about like a stovepipe, fit the hole you want to drill. You'll drop it down in, squeeze the handle, and pull all the slush out at one time. The issue with those is they're very heavy when they're full of water and slush until they break the surface tension. And they do clean the hole out in one go. But if you let go, it's going to the bottom. And they're 75 bucks. So I wasn't a real fan of trying that out. I ended up going with this particular one right here as a way to initially clear out the hole. You insert this in the hole, turn it, pull it up. That gets most of it out. Now you can clear the rest of it out with a simple ice scoop. I actually keep this one by my chair in case I kick snow in my holder in the tent or something, and it quickly cleans it out. This one is made by Rapala. It folds out and it extends. The way I like to use this one is if I'm outside and I've got several holes drilled and I'm searching for fish or jigging and they've frozen over, and I go over and just tap the hole, clean it out, I don't have to bend over, and I can fish. So that's why I like this one as well. I forgot to mention, I should have mentioned this with the tents. This is a fish basket that a lot of people will use for boating and such, to put the fish in to keep them alive. You just drop the fish in the top and it's in there. I put a little clamp with it, and I clamp it to the side of the tent. What this lets me do is it lets me drop a fish in there right after I've caught it and forget about it. It's not going back in the hole, it's not flopping all around, it's not getting me slimy, making a mess on me or the tent. It's contained, it's where I want it to be. Okay, our next subject, clothing. Particularly ice fishing wear and clothing. First thing I'm going to talk about is boots. This is a very, very important item. Your feet are going to be on the ice all day. That is what's going to get cold first. Buy a good pair of boots. I actually have some Orpreens that are made by Baffin, and these have kept me extremely warm. Anything by Baffin that claims to be ice fishing is fantastic. Just make sure you have a good pair of boots. Now, you'll notice on the bottom of these boots, I have some ice cleats. I would recommend some ice cleats of any type. I don't care what they are, get some, because you have not fallen on something hard until you have fallen on the ice. And you really need those to walk on the ice. You just do. That's a must. You must have. Make sure you get a pair of those. Another thing you must know is to keep your feet warm. It doesn't mean you put on a bunch of big thick socks. Matter of fact, if your feet are compressed and they're not getting good blood flow, your feet are going to get cold in the warmest boots. So make sure you put on just enough socks that you can move comfortably in your boots and your feet can have blood flow. That's important to staying warm, more than thick socks. Now, I have a Striker Ice float suit that I wear. Now, you only have to sell a couple kids to buy one of these, but it's totally worth it. This thing will float you if you fall through the ice, like a life jacket. You won't sink. And as far as warmth goes, these are so thin. I thought for sure I was going to freeze to death in this thing because you can move so comfortably in them. But the coldest wind hit me and it didn't even faze me. I cannot tout how amazing this thing is for keeping you warm in a nasty cold wind, giving you movement. I love everything about these. You can adjust them. The knee patches are wiping cloths where you can wipe your hands and unpop them and wash them. They're fantastic little features to the suit. You can adjust the leg lengths. They're just amazing. I also recommend taking some towels with you. You're going to want to wipe the bait off your hands. You're going to want to wipe the slime of the fish off your hands. You don't have open water to wash your hands in. It's freezing cold in the ice hole. So take some rags with you. Also take some sacks, because you're going to want to put the wet rags in sacks, and you're going to want to put your fish in sacks. You don't want slime in your vehicle. One other item I would recommend you take is a good headlight. If you don't have some sort of light and you get caught up there in the dark, you're going to be in a world of hurt without one. Augers. There is one more type of auger called a K-drill, which is basically a hand auger with an attachment that you can use with a 20 volt or something drill, heavy duty cordless drill. Some people like it, some people don't, but that's another option. When you're using an ice auger like this power auger here, remember to be careful with your blades. You don't slam it down on the ice. You're going to ruin your blades if you do that. Be very gentle with how you put it down on the ice. And when it's working, don't push down on it. Let its own weight do the digging. Don't ruin your blades. If you do ruin your blades and you find that it's taking you 10 minutes to drill a hole, it's time to replace the blades. Don't try to get them sharpened. Replace them. You just can't duplicate the laser edge that they have. You need to get them replaced. So make sure you have sharp blades that way and don't dull them. After each ice fishing episode, I like to go and take some type of a lubricant or oil or a rust inhibitor and spray the blades. Make sure that they're going to be in good condition next year or next time that you use them. So in short, ice fishing, you can buy everything or you can go with almost nothing, and you can have fun either way. Don't miss out on some of the most fun fishing of the year because you've never tried it, you're afraid of the ice, or you don't think you know what you're doing, or you think you need special equipment. You don't. Get a fishing pole, get a way to make a hole, get a friend, go out, bring everybody. The more the merrier. This is one of the few times you can ice fish where the more you take, the more fun you're going to have, and nobody's going to have a problem fishing next to you because there is no casting involved. So go and have fun and tight line.